We've been taught everything except how to be human. Welcome to Human School, where remarkable people turn raw, unfiltered experience into practical wisdom. I'm Miles Adcox, and this podcast was born from the belief that you don't graduate from being human. You just get more honest about the lessons. If you're ready to stop performing your life and start participating in it, you're in the right place. This is Human School, where we finally learn what matters most.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Human School. Today's going to be a little different. It's no guest, just me and you. Recently, I shared something that turned out to be way more relatable and encouraging than I ever could have anticipated. And ever since, I've been asking myself the question, why? Why did this message land so deeply? So today, I want to unpack it with you because I think it's pointing to something a lot of us seem to be feeling right now. Here's the message. What a privilege to be tired from the work you once begged the universe for. What a privilege to feel overwhelmed by growth you used to dream about. What a privilege to be challenged by a life you created on purpose. And what a privilege to outgrow things you used to settle for. Now, I want to pause for a moment here and share a story that is both meaningful to me, and it's one that I believe sets the tone for what I'd like to touch on next about this message I just shared. A few years ago, I lost one of the best friends I've ever had. It was way harder on me than I initially anticipated. Her name was Dakota, and she was an Australian cattle dog. Many of you may know that breed is a blue heeler. And I had her since I could put her in the palm of my hand. And we spent every day together, moment by moment together for close to 14 years. She was with me through a whole lot of life and a whole lot of seasons, especially the one in which I was building on site. And there were a lot of ups and downs in those years. One thing that was always steady and reliable is no matter where I went on that campus, no matter where I went in the world, she was right on my heel. Every door I went into, she'd sit and wait without even training at all. She'd sit and wait on me to come out the other side. And as she started to age and get a little older, it became more difficult for her to come with me places. So she ended up staying at home. And even when I would come home and drive in our driveway, she could hear and feel my truck coming in the driveway, and she was always waiting for me when I walked in the door. And as many of you dog lovers know, there's no better greeting. And when I would walk in my home, she would literally follow me step by step everywhere I went. Sometimes I still hear her paw prints on the hardwood floors walking behind me. But I lost her during an interesting season. It was in the middle of the pandemic a few years ago, and it was a season of uncertainty where we didn't really know a lot, but we were getting fed a lot of information that had us at home, and I was pretty nervous. I had to shut down elements of my business and put them on hold. And I was, like a lot of us, stressed and trying to figure it out. And one of the things I did from being home more than usual was I started to really notice my home environment. Now, I'm a big outdoor guy, so I spend more time outside spaces that I live in than I do inside. And I started to notice my yard. I started to notice my landscaping. And I don't know if you saw this, but the stock for Home Depot and some of the other places where you can invest in landscaping and making your yards beautiful skyrocketed during the pandemic. I think a lot of us probably started noticing things we just hadn't had time to notice, and we wanted to spend time trying to put some beauty into the spaces that we call home. Well, I certainly was one of those, but I had two things going on. One, I was excited to go irrigate my yard and put some new sod in and put some landscaping in, things I just hadn't made time to do in the years previous. I also was dealing with a business that was pretty flat from a revenue standpoint, and I was trying to keep all my folks employed. So I had both things going on. I felt a little guilty for spending the money, but I worked hard, and so I did it. And I felt guilty until the moment I walked out the front door for the first time when it was done. And I'll never forget, it was kind of one of those Clark Griswold Christmas Vacation moments where the drum roll and the lights came on, and it was just beautiful. Everything was perfect. Everything was in place. The yard looked stunning. and I was thrilled with it. This was right around the time that my aging dog started to get sick. And Dakota started to lose her vision and she started to lose her hearing. And it was getting pretty difficult. I was having to be pretty hands-on with her around the clock with her care. And we had this routine that we'd had for years, but it became ever more important for me to accompany her on this routine in her final days, which was I would walk her to the front door and try to kind of guide her out into the yard so she could go to the bathroom in the mornings. And we would do that every morning around 6:30 a.m. And this morning was with our new yard. And one thing I didn't know was that new yards, especially sod and dog pee, are not a good mix. So after about 3 days of her going out to the same spot in the yard, my beautiful yard suddenly had this dead brown spot. And ironically, it was in the most prominent, visible spot in the whole property. You couldn't miss it. It was what you would see if you were driving by. It was what I saw every morning when I walked out the door. It's what a guest would see if they walked in the sidewalk to the front door. So this landscape, this kind of masterpiece I thought I had created, suddenly all I could see was this brown spot, which ironically she didn't have that good of an aim, so it got a little bigger. It ended up being like a 5 by 5 or maybe a 7 foot by 7 foot big dead spot in the most prominent part of the yard. As you can imagine, I got pretty frustrated by that. I just spent this money and everything looked great, and suddenly I couldn't see the beauty anymore. All I saw was the brown spot. I was hyper focused on it. I was kind of like a buzzard that was flying over hundreds of acres of beautiful green grass and flowers, and all I could see was the one dead rotting carcass, and I couldn't do anything but circle it. So our morning routine got a little contentious there towards the end. And when she would go out, I would try to drag her over. I would get onto her. The first thing I would do is say, "Dakota, no, don't do that." I'd try to drag her over and teach her to go in the mulch. And she was old, and I don't think she cared much. She was probably looking at me like, "Look, buddy, you go 10 feet from your bed. It's pretty convenient, so this is where I'm going to go." But there wasn't much I could do. About a week into that experience, with me being frustrated with her going and the yard being dead, we had our final day together. She took a downward turn, and I'll never forget, I loaded her up in the car. We went and did some of her favorite things. We took a last truck ride, and I took her to Outback and got her a filet, and she got to eat that. I took her to Starbucks and got a pup cup, and she got to eat that. And then we made it back home, and the vet came over, and I had to say goodbye to my friend. And I got to tell you, the next morning changed my life, because I woke up at 6:30 and I went out in the front yard without my best friend. And suddenly that brown dead spot that I was frustrated at and I didn't want to see, I went and stood in the middle of it. And it ended up becoming my prized possession, because all I could think about was, if I could get another day with her, I think I'd just kill the whole yard. And sometimes it's those subtle perspective shifts that get our attention. It's often the thing that sits just underneath the surface that we're not proud of and that maybe don't want people to see, that if we shift the way we look at it, maybe it ends up becoming the thing that we most long for. It's the unpretty parts of us and the things that we often perceive are not worth talking about or allowing people to see, that once they're gone, we end up valuing the most. That helped me that day begin to shift my perspective in a lot of good ways. And now I find myself, when I'm stressed and tired and overwhelmed, and I have a different way of looking at that. And if I turn it on its head, often I feel like some of the things that overwhelm me and stress me, I feel quite privileged to be able to have. And some of the things that I complain about now and tell you were really hard, like building a business or building a relationship or sustaining a marriage, I look back at some of those years, the early years of parenting, and boy, I miss them. So I think right now, many of us are tired, and not necessarily because life is bad, it's because life is full. It's full of schedules and full of kids and full of deadlines and relationships and projects and expectations. And when you're in it, when you're juggling it all, It's easy to forget that at some point we asked for this. We chased it. We hoped for it. We even built it. And now that it's here, it doesn't always feel like we imagined it would. Sometimes the very thing we prayed for becomes the thing we feel buried under. Now, I want to be clear. I know some of us are tired not because of what we pursued, but because life has handed us circumstances we never would have chosen. Some of you are carrying things you didn't sign up for, like caring for someone who's sick, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. That's a different kind of tired, and it deserves its own compassion. But what I'm referring to is a lot of the advice we hear when we're overwhelmed is good advice. Slow down, unplug, take breaks, reset, go off the grid, simplify. I've said a lot of those things, and I really believe in them. I run an organization that helps people ground themselves in learning to create a rested presence and become more connected to who they are and how they're becoming. And a lot of the things we prescribe are the very things I just mentioned. But if I'm honest, for a lot of people raising kids and leading teams, building something from nothing, caring for a sick parent, those suggestions don't feel realistic. They often feel idealistic. And sometimes that only makes us feel worse, like we're failing twice. I'm exhausted and I can't even get the rest part right. So instead of starting with stop, maybe we should start with look. Look at what's making us tired. Is it stress or is it growth? Is it chaos or is it capacity? Is it heaviness or is it evidence of your purpose? Is it the burden or is it the blessing? Because when we remember that we helped create this, that we dreamed about living a life that asks something of us, it shifts our experience. And we can move from feeling like a victim of our own momentum to remembering that at one point we were the author of it. Exhaustion without meaning drains us. Exhaustion with meaning can sustain us. There was a season not too long ago when I looked at my calendar, my schedule, my responsibilities, and I even said out loud, I feel like I'm drowning some days. Someone really close to me said, Miles, remember when this exact calendar was your dream? And it hit me. I'm tired, yes, but I'm tired because I'm living the life I once hoped would happen. That doesn't mean I don't need rest, structure, boundaries. All of that still matters. But it does mean I need perspective. Because when the story changes, the way I carry it also changes. This is not at all to glorify burnout. I'm not romanticizing exhaustion. I'm just saying I think we can hold both a little differently. We can be tired and grateful. We can be overwhelmed and proud. We can be stretched and still know we're right where we're supposed to be. And we can outgrow things and still honor who we were when we chose them. Psychologically, this is called reframing. Shifting how we interpret our experience changes how our brain and our bodies hold it. I'm drowning becomes I'm expanding. I can't keep up becomes I'm growing beyond my previous capacity. And when I'm tired, I remind myself, what a privilege. So here's the invitation as we head into a week that for many of us is about gratitude and thanksgiving. What are you tired of? And could that tiredness be evidence of something you once dreamed about? Maybe instead of saying, I have to, we start saying, I get to. I get to show up for these kids. I get to lead this team. I get to build what I used to just talk about in conversation. I get to fight for what matters. And I get to be entrusted with things I once wondered if I'd even be capable of. I still do. So it's not instead of rest, it's before it. Because gratitude without honesty is denial. But honesty without gratitude is despair. I want to say that again. Gratitude without honesty is denial. But honesty without gratitude is despair. The art is learning to hold both. So if you're listening today and you're tired, before you try to fix it, just notice it, honor it, and then gently ask yourself, is this tiredness a receipt for a life I chose? And if the answer is yes, even just for today, maybe whisper to yourself, what a privilege. because naming that doesn't erase the fatigue, but it does restore some dignity. It reminds us that even the life we dreamed of still asks something of us. And that is not failure. That's human school. Thank you for being here. I hope this lands at just the right moment for you. And if it does, please share it with someone who might need the reminder. And not everything that stretches you is breaking you. Sometimes it's growing you. I'll see you next time.